Students. So today we are going to start with the topic sustainable management of natural resources. So this is the biology chapter 16. Living in harmony with nature is not new to us. Sustainable living has always been an integral part of India's tradition and culture. It has been integrated with our long lasting traditions and practices, customs, art and crafts, festivals, food, beliefs, rituals, and folklore. Ingrained within us is the philosophy that entire natural world be in harmony, which is reflected in the famous phrase in Sanskrit, Vasudev Kutubam. That means the entire earth is our one family. The phrase is mentioned in Maha Upanishad. That is probably a part of the ancient Indian text, Atharva Veda. In class 9th, we have already learned about some natural resources like soil, oil, and water, and how various components are cycled over and over again in nature. So, in this chapter, we'll talk about basically this chapter. What it's saying is that in this, as we all know, that our traditions, our culture, our long-lasting philosophy is that the earth is one family, which is very much you could see in the Sanskrit phrase that is Vasudev Kutumbakam, which means that the earth is the entire earth is one family. So having said so, it is very important that we need to treat our family equivalently. We need to take care of a family. So earth being the entire earth being one family, we need to take care of it. We need to make sure that the resources are very sustainable, that it is being carefully used and monitored. And in class 9 we have already learned about the natural resources like soil, air and water, and how the various components are cycled over and over again in nature. Also, we learned in the previous chapter about the pollution of these resources because of some of our activities. In this chapter, we shall look at some of our resources and how we are using them. Maybe we should also think about how we ought to be using our resources so as to sustain them and conserve our environment. So in the last class, in the last chapter, what we have discussed is we have discussed how natural resources like soil, water, and various other components are cycled over again, and also how these are polluted by some of our man-made activities, and in this chapter we'll just look into how we can sustain these resources so that it can be used over a long run, it can be used by generations to come. We shall be looking at our natural resources like forest, wildlife, water, coal and petroleum to see what are the issues at stake in deciding how these resources are to be managed for sustainable development along with the input from our traditional practices. So in this chapter, what we'll be discussing is how we can conserve our environment, how we can conserve our natural resources like forest, wildlife, water, coal and petroleum, and we'll also discuss the issues that are at stake and we'll discuss the outcome and the possibilities how we can do that by keeping in check with our traditional practices. We often hear or read about environmental problems. These are often global-led problems and we feel helpless to bring any change. There are international laws and regulations, and then there are our own national laws and acts of environmental protection. Obviously, there are national and international laws conserving resources, conserving wildlife, conserving forest. So these are also put in place, and there are also national and international organizations working towards protecting our environment. So awareness about the problems caused by unthinkingly exploiting our resources has been a fairly recent phenomenon in our society, and once this awareness rises, some action is usually taken. You must have heard about the Ganga Action Plan, the multi-crore project that came about in 1985 because the quality of water in the Ganga was very poor. Coliform is a group of bacteria found in human intestine which presence in water indicates contamination by disease-causing microorganisms. So in the next class we'll continue with the short story about discussing about how we can start off with First we'll discuss about the pollution of Ganga, how it got polluted, what are the basic measures that have been taken, and then we'll discuss about refuse, reduce, and reuse, the measures that needs to be taken to conserve our resources.